Welcome to Twigg and Jenkins. We've got a little bit of a different vibe this week because Twigg is not here. And I'd like to announce that the Twigg and Jenkins podcast is now the Chopra and Jenkins podcast because we have one of my favorite humans. I've known Ro for so many years. He's the former director of the CFPB. He's doing it, man. You're everywhere. I saw you on CNN. I saw you on NPR. I saw you on 60 Minutes. I saw you on our boy Ryan Grimm's show. And I'm like, we got to get Rohit on the Twigg and Jenkins podcast. Twigg could not make it in for it. But first off, I just want to check on your mental health because I feel like did Trump call you personally is the question. Did he call you? Was Elon behind him? And they were like, you're fired straight out of The Apprentice. What was the past couple of weeks like for you?
It was crazy because I think Wall Street was praying that I'd be fired seconds after the inauguration.
Yeah.
But there was a battle about what to do about the CFPB, and I hung on another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But then I think the tech mafia really figured something out, and then I got a letter saying I'm out.
Wow. The letter was addressed to you personally?
It was, and I think I said I'll keep serving my 5-year term until replaced. I was not going to just surrender.
Yeah.
I thought it was important to make the record clear that he removed me.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing almost every day, we're learning the new leadership is pardoning, issuing corporate pardons to Capital One, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and predatory lenders that we took to court.
Corporate pardons. This is not. Walk me through that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, what we see is during our time at the CFPB, we recovered billions of dollars for people.
Yeah.
But we also went to court and were fighting it out with some of the biggest companies in the economy for cheating people. But what we have seen from the new leadership, without any announcement, any press release, going to court and saying, we are dismissing this case with prejudice.
Wow.
So that's a legal mumbo jumbo for saying, we're dropping the case and we're not going to refile it. So this is a big bonanza for a lot of companies we charge with breaking the law. And in many cases, we had absolutely damning evidence.
The incredible thing, Ro, Twigg and I have been trying to be patient. Patient is the right word, because I think that if you live in D.C., it's almost hard. You have to gird yourself every day for the hollowing out of the federal government, for the attack on pretty much, if you come to Washington, D.C., you believe that you can make the country and the world a better place. And that fundamental attack on public service is apparent every single day. The thing that strikes me, if I were Joe Rogan and I was like Trump's bestie, this would be an agency that I would tell Trump not to fuck with. This would be the agency that I would tell Trump, you want the CFPB. Because your job, I don't think people realize what the CFPB is. Like the CFPB of all of these agencies, especially considering that Elon Musk is coming in here saying Doge is going to fight fraud and abuse. That is what the CFPB does, right? That is fundamentally, they're protecting millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans from fraud and abuse, from corporations, from payday lenders, from health insurance companies, from all of the evil access of America, corporate oligarchy. And that is the first thing. Firing you, and then walk me through right now, because it sounds like they're saying to the CFPB they have to stop all of the work that you guys are doing. And then the last thing, and then I'll shut up, because I do want to let Rohit cook. The architect of Project 2025 is this guy Vaught. Ironically, he's the same name as the villain in The Boys, which is just perfect synergy for American narrative. He took over the CFPB. So what? Why? What? I know what the answer is, and maybe we don't even need to say it, but I think for the American people watching, why was the CFPB created is number one. Number two, what were you guys working on right at this moment that they shut you down? And then I think last is, what can we all do right now in this moment?
I think in some ways, I don't necessarily want everyone to have to memorize every acronym of every government agency, but I do want them to be able to walk into an elevator and it not collapse the building on them. I want them to be able to board a plane and safely get to their destination. And I also want everybody to be able to just manage their money without getting cheated at every step of the way, from their bank account, mortgage, their credit card, student loan. And I think, Brad, here's really what happened 15, 25 years, 20 years ago, is that everyone in America for a long time was really told, do two things and you're going to be set for life financially. We were all saying this to young adults, kids. One was, if you buy a home, that's the best investment you'll ever make, and you'll have a safe and secure future. And for younger people, go to college.
Yep.
That's the best investment you'll ever get. And here's what we saw. We saw the dream of homeownership turn into a nightmare during the subprime mortgage crisis, where we allowed trillions of dollars of wealth from families just disappear because of absolute lawlessness, greed, and failure by the federal financial regulators. And then afterward, we saw a massive $1 trillion student debt crisis where over 1 million Americans were defaulting every year.
Wow.
And much of that was due to corporate-owned, private equity-owned, publicly traded, for-profit colleges where there was systemic lying and abuse. And you want a system where there's not just laws on the books, but someone enforcing it. And at its core, the CFPB is a law enforcement agency.
Yeah.
We helped uncover the Wells Fargo fake account scandal, Sally Mae and Navient's law breaking. So fast forward to today, lots of people have seen their overdraft fees go down, their credit card fees go down. During COVID, the mortgage market did not implode like the subprime mortgage days. And I think what's really interesting right now is that these last few years, the CFPB really put a magnifying glass on the big tech companies that were entering payments and lending. And we've seen it everywhere. Google Pay, Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal.
Yeah.
And many of those companies already have so much power.
Yep.
But they really want to get their hands on all of our payments information. They want to know how much we're paying for, what did we last look up online, who were we with, what's our geolocation, and what was our mental state during it?
Yeah.
Were we scared? Were we excited? Because that is the holy grail of personalized pricing.
Right.
We also were looking at how they were collecting information about payments, whether they were engaged in something called debanking. We saw PayPal announcing that we're going to fine you or close your account if we don't like your speech. So this was really a lot of power that these tech companies were accumulating. And we didn't stop them, but we put some speed bumps in place.
Yeah.
We saw Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook. They actually tried to create their own currency. And that really raised some real questions that we kicked the tires on. And I think that was one thing. The first rule that the Senate is looking and the House looking to overturn of the CFPB, it's not about overdraft fees, not about medical debt, not the other high-profile issues. It was about our ability to oversee the tech companies and their digital wallets. And I think that we know that Twitter, whatever they're calling it, X, wants to become a bank, wants to really have an eye on the flow of payments to be able to decide and get that data. So we don't know, but I have some real concerns about what is going on there right now.
Yeah.
Who are they snooping on? What data are they taking? They're also, as you know, looking at Treasury's payment systems. And so we have to understand what's going on. And I think defunding the police that look after Wall Street and big tech is just baiting big problems.
Yeah, it's so obvious. It's like every time I've watched, you were great on 60 Minutes, but there's a piece where I don't know how it does feel like a bad Adam McKay movie on Netflix. I don't know how much louder we can yell what is fundamentally happening when we know at the inauguration on that dais who is behind Donald Trump. It's every tech CEO right now who you just mentioned who want and will continue to bootlick this president for their personal gain. And the thing that's striking to me in this moment is that we have not figured out a way to break this down to the American people, how this president has built an entire empire off of scams. Like you had just mentioned Trump. You just mentioned, for-profit colleges. What do we do in this moment where I feel like it doesn't matter how many times we're shouting it from the rooftops, what is taking place right now? And it's not just the CFPB. I think the CFPB, ironically, and I'm not just saying this because you've been an incredible leader of an agency whose number one job is to protect consumers. Like you have no other agenda. Your agenda is to find fraud and scams and people preying on folks and prosecuting those big banks, prosecuting those private equity or those shitheads, and getting that money back to everyday people. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing. Why are there not more people that just put those two things together and realize that Donald Trump's number one agenda, Elon Musk's number one agenda, all of these Google and Facebook and all of these billionaires' agenda is to make money off of you, everyday person. They're going to scam you. Rohit's job was to protect you. That was his job. His job was to prosecute and investigate corporate billionaires who are trying to scam you. And as much as I appreciate and love the protests that are happening, I feel like this is the one where people need to be losing their minds, that they would attack the one agency that's trying to protect everyday people. So what do we do other than me getting fired up here? What can we do in this moment? I feel like your media hits have been so good, but I was just at Harvard Law, not to name drop, and I wore the same suit I was wearing there when I spoke. And there's a huge photo of Professor Warren as I walked in, and I literally did a tip of my cap. God bless Professor Warren. God bless her pushing on the American public, pushing on Barack Obama to create this agency. And this agency that you ran, I would say, has been the proudest moment of the Obama administration, was creating this agency. So what can we do? I know that there's lawsuits right now to protect the CFPB. Is there something that people watching from home, how do we support Rohit Chopra in this moment?
It's not about supporting, I think, any individual.
Yeah.
But I think it does behoove everybody, number one, not to get despondent.
Yeah.
Because some of the great moments in history are when We do speak up and speak out. But here's what I'd say is that I think it's also worth thinking about that since 1980 up until 2020, we saw a pretty steady concentration of power in a smaller and smaller set of hands. We saw so much corporate consolidation. We saw the biggest banks get bailed out and not really pay any consequences. Instead, they got bigger and more powerful. So we are, in some ways, trusting people on both sides about the economy in ways that just have not worked. There's lots of discussions right now about trade. We should be honest with ourselves. And while I don't agree with a trade war with Canada, I would acknowledge that the trade policies over the last 40 years have overwhelmingly helped those at the top and a small set of multinationals. It has not it has hollowed out in much of the country a way for people to lead their life in a way that they want to. So I think we actually, and I have a lot of conservative friends, what we see eye to eye on is that there is excessive concentration of corporate power. In many ways, a lot of people say we always have to be skeptical of government power. That is true. It's why we have to hold government accountable. But we also, a lot of the rules that we live by are not set by Congress or state legislatures. They're set by big companies. And until we really address and check that abuse of power, I don't think we will have anyone trust that the government is working. If the government is not taking on those big actors, why is it that drug prices are so damn high? Why is it that we have algorithms, software that was rigging the rents of apartment buildings, pushing up the cost of housing for people? And why was it that the cost, while we had inflation, corporate profits on food were surging? And this is something that is clearly about a need for a totally different way to fix what is wrong in our economy. And I will tell you that the economy should not be there to serve just Silicon Valley and Wall Street. It's really there for us to make sure that everyone has a decent life and that they feel that the American dream is not some lie to make people richer.
It hurts my soul to say this out loud, but I'm going to do it because you and I are Obama brethren. Rohit and I are also the third Moffo brother, so shout out to Chris and Mike Moffo. These are my childhood friends from New Jersey. Chris went to Harvard. College roommates with Ro. And then you guys lived together in D.C. I lived with the Moffo brothers in New Jersey, or excuse me, in Chicago for the campaign, but I grew up with these guys. And the Obama era was a lot of things. We were particularly hopeful about the promise of Silicon Valley and the promise of innovation. And you could pick a different topic area throughout the federal government. And there seemed to be, I think now in retrospect, almost like a corporate capture that Silicon Valley had over those Obama years. That we did believe that, I remember, maybe people are going to get upset by this, but we would have departure parties for everyone leaving the White House. You get the cake from the West Wing mess, and Valerie Jarrett would come out and she'd give a speech, and everyone would go around talking about how amazing this person was and the work that they did at the White House in helping, depending on the work that they did, whether it's veterans or whether it's the disability community, whether it's the faith community, and how they're going to take all these skills learned and they're going to make the world a better place at Facebook, at Google, at Twitter, right? we really got hoodwinked. Like, we got. Because, to your point, I am embarrassed. I am actually embarrassed of Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. I'm embarrassed. I feel hoodwinked, personally. And the fact that not only are they standing there behind this guy on the dais, just straight up bootlicking, but they are coming after you. Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, speaking of someone who was in the Obama White House all the time, is coming out here attacking you, calling you names, in fact. What did he call you? I think that there's audio. Sorry, I'm getting Rohit in trouble now. But what are we doing here? What are we actually doing here? What do these players want that they don't already have? I think that's the scary part for me, right? Because to your point, this was work you were already on, but maybe walk with us like 3 steps into the future. If they get their druthers, right? What does this look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when there is no CFPB? What does this look like?
I think that it used to be, and we're probably old enough to remember this, but there were a lot more medium-sized, even I would call it big businesses.
Yeah.
They were headquartered all over America. They were places that sponsored the parades.
Yep.
They were people like you went to school with kids whose parents ran them. And yeah, they were like a little richer.
Mm-hmm.
Now something is different, though. In the area where I grew up, just outside Philadelphia, in South Jersey, the local bank got transacted multiple times.
Yep.
And is now Wells Fargo. In many places, when that happens, all sorts of things change. And that happened in every sector of the economy. And I think what you're reflecting on is at the time, it felt like these new tech companies, they were different.
Yeah.
I think there was a sense, and I agree with you, a lot of people, though, were tricked by it because they got to a size where obviously they were engaged in some real questionable stuff.
Things at the FTC that you went after.
Yes. When I was an FTC commissioner and looked at some of those documents, you really got worried. Were some of the senior-most people at the FTC during the Bush and Obama administration more fixated with batting their eyelashes at these corporate CEOs so that they could one day cash out? And I think that really undermines trust a lot. And that is why we have in some ways feel like the situation is that there's not local business anymore.
Right.
The local pharmacists are like gone.
Yeah.
You have to go to CVS and Walgreens. And I think that I'm not romanticizing that, but it just used to be that local business and mid-sized business felt like something that was part of what people started and what was in their life. And now there is so many places in the country that people feel like their kids have no opportunity there.
Yeah.
And they have to leave.
Yeah.
And we just are seeing more decisions made about all parts of towns, cities, made from far away.
Yep.
And their jobs are shipped overseas or sent away. And I think that we have to reflect upon, is that something that was just wrong?
Yeah.
Just wrong about taking away. I look at a lot of those towns and cities and neighborhoods who were affected by job losses from trade, outsourcing.
Yep.
And we saw foreclosures. We saw opioids. This is just should not happen in America. And I think that it is good for us to develop an honest sense that the politicians,
Yep.
but also people who run agencies have to actually be accountable to the people with the least amount of voice, not the ones who can traipse around the White House
Yes.
and get meetings whenever they want.
It's ironic to me. I think you should go on a road show. I think you should go on all of the right-wing manosphere podcasts, Ro. I really do. Because I noticed that Kirk went on Gavin's new pod, or maybe you start your own, because it's striking to me how, especially a figure like Joe Rogan, right? A figure like Rogan who tries to be this, I was a Bernie bro, but then Democrats didn't want me in the party. And I'm all about fighting for the everyday American, fighting for the working class American. And Democrats, all they care about are the billionaire class, right? They love to throw that billionaire word around every single day. Can we go back in the Wayback Machine? Can you walk folks through? Because I also found it funny. I was looking at some of your content or some of the hits you had. And then there are people tweeting because they're like children, right? Like they're like, I'm sure that they're maybe 19 years old, but they literally ask the question, or bots. True, good point. They could just be Russian bots, but they're literally asking the question. We survived before the CFPB. Nothing happened before the CFPB.
Yeah.
I'd be like, are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? And for those that don't know, can you walk through how the CFPB started, why it started? And then I think, again, where you already had bipartisan support for putting protections in place for everyday people. It does not matter where you live. It does not matter what race you are. It does not matter if your congressman is a Republican or a Democrat. They are protecting you. They are protecting you from getting scammed. They're protecting your grandmother from giving all of her money away to some payday lender. I think that's the crazy thing of how they have politicized. Even Elon is tweeting about you, right? Like, excited that the CFPB is going to die. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
I guess I'd say this, which is, in some ways, I don't love the term protecting.
Yeah.
It's true. Law enforcement does that. But really what we focused on was also giving a lot of power to individuals.
Yes.
Essentially to be able to vote with their feet, to fire a company that gives them bad service or a bad price. We put in, you might remember, back in the day, you used to have to, when you were changing your cell phone carrier, you actually had to switch your number.
Oh, yeah.
So no one wanted to do it because it was such a pain.
That's why I still have my Brooklyn number.
But
I've had it forever. I can change it now.
You can. The
yeah.
FCC issued a rule saying a consumer gets to take their number with them.
Yeah.
And what happened was lots more sweat from the carriers that customers would fire them. We've put into place something similar at the CFPB where you can switch your bank account more easily, switch your credit card. We also want people to be able to assert their rights under the law that they may not even know about.
Yeah.
We also know that a lot of these markets that people are operating in, they don't get to choose. You don't get to choose to do business with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
True.
You don't choose your student loan servicer or mortgage servicer that collects your payments.
Yep.
You don't choose so many of this. So that's why we had to do and act.
Such a great point.
Now, I think when...
So if they're scamming you, you hear this all the time.
You can't do anything about it.
Republicans say this all the time. Just find another company. Find a better company. No, you don't have a choice. These are the people that you are, right? You're fighting for people to have a choice and for there to be transparency. But when I take out a mortgage, I don't get to say how that is.
Who collects the payments?
Who collects the payments?
What did we see around after the financial crisis?
Yeah.
Those mortgage servicers engaged in so many illegal foreclosures, including of military families,
Yeah.
active duty,
Yeah.
illegally.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. A lot of people were personally affected by the mortgage crisis or the student loan crisis, even to this day. But it was something that I don't know if everyone realizes how much it tanked,
Yeah.
not just the economy, but physically changed what neighborhoods look like, boarded up homes, really destroyed.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason why there needed to be some more accountability for these big financial firms that in many ways made big money,
Yep.
then got bailed out,
Yep.
and it just felt so fundamentally unfair. So I think that we have to really take a hard look at all parts of the economy. And we can't forget that banking is supposed to be about letting us reach our potential,
Yep.
to borrow to start a small business, to buy a home, to let businesses grow. We're taping this on 2 years after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank
Yeah.
and Signature Bank, which led to emergency actions to stop the entire banking system from falling. And what bugs me is that we had said even before the collapse,
Yeah.
the things that needed to be fixed to protect ordinary people. Now, the big depositors, some of them multi-billion-dollar depositors, they got protected due to the emergency actions of 2 years ago. But more recently, a small rural bank
Yep.
failed. And they didn't threaten the entire economy. So who lost out there? Depositors who were in that rural town. It could have been the big depositors, could have been the church, could have
Right,
been the
right.
pharmacy. And there is just something that feels totally wrong about how when the most powerful firms and citizens run into trouble, the government runs to help them.
Yes. Yes.
And when you're trying to put in reforms to help everyone else, all you hear is pushback and oftentimes lies
Yeah.
from the biggest companies that will just modestly profit a little bit less. And I think that's what we don't want business to be about. We want business to be about creating awesome things and serving people great and for them to make a fair profit.
Yes.
And sometimes we see a totally different mindset. I remember there were companies that were actually investing in technical talent, UX design, user interfaces, to figure out ways to make it harder for people to cancel subscriptions. People probably know everything now has turned into a subscription. You can't just buy something. You
Right.
now have to pay some recurring fee.
Right.
So the FTC, Lena Khan led this
Yep.
to put into place rules to make it easier to click to cancel. And you should see the pushback from
Yeah.
some of the companies on this. When I was at the Federal Trade Commission, we inherited a policy that said made in USA fraud should not be penalized. You could rip off a made in China label and stick on a made in USA label, and if the FTC caught you, it was catch and release. And this was a policy that was over both administrations of both parties. And finally, before I left the FTC, myself, Lena Khan, Becca Slaughter, we finally voted to overturn that after so much pushback from our Trump-appointed commissioners. So I think that there is so much of just fixing what is wrong here.
Yeah.
And it's not just something recent. It really goes back a while.
Bro, I want to thank you for joining us. You have to come back when Twig is back, and we can talk more about New Jersey, I don't even know if you're a sports fan, but
Of course, an Eagles fan. You know that, and I know that you're not, which is very offensive.
I'm not an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Given where you grew up, it's
God
quite
bless you.
offensive.
God bless you. God bless your Eagles. The thing I love about the Eagles is how they have rebuffed Trump's invitation to the White House a second time, which is unbelievable. But do you have any, you've been on the rounds, you've been doing really great media, God bless. Is there anything that you feel like you've just wanted to cook on? Because the work that we all do, this is the other thing I'm realizing too, they've been very good at attacking all the things all at once. And it's almost sometimes hard to wake up and realize, oh, okay, oh, wow, now it's the Department of Education. Oh, okay, now it's Veterans Affairs. But for someone who, particularly young people who are confronting this every morning, like what are words? I love what you just said earlier, which is they want you to feel hopeless. They want you to feel as if this is now King Trump and they just do not give a fuck about you. They're going to do whatever it is that they want to do. The beautiful thing is that there are so many incredible humans, lawyers in particular, who are fighting this each and every day. But for those who are obviously fans of you and Elizabeth Warren and so many others, Bernie's out there doing his Fight Oligarchy tour. What are there glimpses of hope? And what are you looking forward to every day? What are ways in which people can get involved right now?
Yeah, I think that you can't really just give up.
Yeah.
I know that's a little Pollyanna to say, but it can become so easy to say, I'm just not going to pay attention to any of this.
Yeah.
The problem with that, and it is good for people to disconnect, absolutely, but we have to remember that we love our country. We want everyone to be able to create a society that I think treats everyone with the dignity of a human being and not judge them by their bank account balance.
Yeah.
And so societies and countries that disconnect from what is happening by who is ruling them, we have seen throughout history that is not the way to do it. And so many people have a voice, they have a community, they have people that they can organize, they can speak up. And there's going to be different ways that people do that. Some people will run for office. Some people will just make a call or show up. But I think it's just too important to act and speak right now.
Agreed.
Otherwise, I think it can only go in the wrong direction.
Agreed. You are the man. Thank you so much. First off, should have did this at the beginning, but just thank you for your service for so many years. And Rohit's one of those rare people who he's the smartest person in the room, but he's very nice at not reminding you that he's the smartest person in the room. Because I remember we did this convention party and Rohit came to the convention party with all these young staffers, got down on the dance floor with us in Chicago. But at the same time, the fight that you're waging right now, and I'm serious, for people watching and you're in people's mentions, or you're watching all this content, I've yet to see a single credible argument from anyone on why the CFPB should not be not only fully funded, should be funded more. If the actual mission of Doge, if we want to take that at face value, someone explain to me how the CFPB isn't the first agency or department that you're going to and saying, how can we give you more money to do what you're doing? So again, I think we know what this is all about. I think that we all have to continue to support folks like Rohit. And we're going to have you back because here's the other thing we were saying before we started recording. You're at the tip of the iceberg, bro. It's just going to get worse and worse. Sorry to...
I think we're supposed to be more hopeful, Brad.
No, I just mean...
No, the stakes are so high.
The stakes are so high. The hollowing out the CFPB will lead to other things.
There will be consequences.
There will be consequences. I guess
we'll
I'm
see.
putting
we'll see. And I think it's going to... We can't just be passive observers.
Yeah, it's true. All right, Twig, we wish you could have joined us. I think we're going to do a quick one-on-one here to process Ro actually hanging out with us. But again, thank you so much, Rohit. We appreciate you. Can people follow you? You're on all the things.
Yep. Chopra USA, and
There we go.
we'll keep at it.
And then speaking of running for office, clearly we'll work on this later. Your announcement for public office, I'm sure, will come very soon. But we love you, Ro. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Twig,
Bro.
how are you? I dressed up. Also, Rohit was so sad you weren't here. He was so disappointed.
No. Was he really?
He's such a fan of yours. And he's like, where's Carrie? And I was like, oh, she couldn't make it. Sorry. And then he looked at me and was like, all right, I guess we have to go. I'm here. So
I doubt that.
No, it's true. He was not happy. He was not happy that you weren't here, but
we should do a better job of prepping guests. It's like, it's one thing for us not to prep. It's another thing for us not to particularly communicate.
You know what? At the risk of sounding like one of these people that I feel like prep sometimes takes the magic out of everything. I think it's good that we don't prep our guests. I think it's good that they're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Who knows?
Sure.
This is also great recruitment for our guests. They're like, oh, yeah, don't go on Twig and Jenkins.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
They don't know what is happening.
I will say, controversial opinion.
Go.
I think we might want to consider
prepping.
There's just so much is happening.
So much is happening. We went into it, and I think the good news for Rohit is he has a lot of hope right now. There are multiple lawsuits right now trying to, much like a lot of the other funding freezes that have happened. So I think that for Rohit, look, all hope is not lost. I think the part where he is mostly concerned are, and we didn't get too much into this because I think once he made the connection with the tech world, I was like, all right, let's just go down this rabbit hole. Let's go down this rabbit hole of like, why does tech want the CFPB not to exist? Is because all of tech wants to get into the payments business. Elon Musk's biggest gambit right now is X money, X dollars.
I think that's the thing that's so insidious and like really best exemplified by the destruction of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is like how insidious it is. Like, Doge isn't actually about efficiency. It's about eliminating technical expertise.
Yes.
They do not want people who know more than they do or who can immediately catch on to what they are up to and attempt to either slow them down or stop them. They don't want Rohits. They don't want people who are technically astute and sophisticated and who understand and have a context and a history for all of these things, because they only want people who are either going to go whole cloth with the talking points that they have or think that they're saving America.
And those are the people that they went after first, were all the people supervising and overseeing tech.
Yeah.
Those are the first people that they fired.
At what point is anyone going to just say, I've gotten enough?
Yeah.
If $350 billion isn't enough, like
what is enough?
What are you doing?
What is enough?
What an embarrassing amount of cash.
And then to be such a bootlicker too.
You know what I mean? But then to use all of that power to then amass more cash, like I really cannot understand that kind of psychology.
To be ringside at WWE last night, which is what Zuck just posted a photo today. It's just embarrassing. It really, truly is.
I would sit ringside at WWE, so I'm not going to go that far. I think that's fun entertainment. But I would never build something so monstrous and then continue to have this like fully rapacious and insatiable desire, regardless of what it's doing to damage not only my home nation, and my fellow citizens and community members, but like people across the world.
Rohit also brought up what people can do. And I think we talked a little bit about speaking of Broligarchy, a little bit about the Bernie Oligarchy tour, which has been incredible.
I was watching some footage of that today.
I should not have given it such little love last week. It was
It's
incredible.
really catching fire. Yeah, it's really catching on, man.
It was incredible. And the fact that he's the only one doing this is striking. What are you cooking on right now, Twig? Since we last spoke, I feel like everything is always happening all at once, but is there anything that's in your wheelhouse this past week?
Yeah, I've been tracking some of the moves coming out of Hollywood. There was an interesting article, I should look up the journalist's name, I don't remember it off the top of my head, in the Wall Street Journal about how Hollywood's rushing to greenlight shows that sort of reflect Trump cultural values, which is not a surprise, but yeah, not a surprise at all. But I'm watching that and figuring out
what are Trump cultural values?
Duck Dynasty is coming back.
Oh, yeah.
There's it's good TV. Is
that Trump cultural values? Do they just mean like white people? What do they mean by that?
I think they mean white people. I think they also mean white people in the middle of the country. I think they mean more open expressions of religiosity. Like Duck Dynasty episodes usually end with the family praying together.
True.
There's a Tim Allen show on Disney Plus that is doing quite well, that debuted in January, and like it's like a father-daughter show, and there's all this tension between the daughter's embarrassed because the dad's politically incorrect because Tim Allen is politically incorrect.
Oh boy.
And he's like making fun of wokeness in a certain way, like Disney's pulling transgender characters from shows. I'm clocking all of those types of things. I think we need to integrate into some of our decision making the things we watch. Things we watch and the art that we support and the culture that we support is an important part of voting with your feet, right? It's like don't buy from stores, but also don't watch and stream things if they don't somehow reinforce or support the idea that it's any number of things. You have a president attacking trans kids in a joint state, and then like it pops up in pop culture as like this funny little thing, and it's actually that ladders up to something really dangerous and something really disturbing, even if it's quote unquote funny in the scene. And like I'm not a humorless person but I think we need to have a little bit more scrutiny on those types of things. And so I'm tracking that. I'm obviously tracking what's happening with tariffs. Canada just still chose who their next prime minister is going to be. Obviously, Europe is figuring out what it's going to do. South by Southwest was this past week.
Oh, did you go?
I did not go.
Do you remember when you and I spoke at a panel?
Ages ago, right?
Yeah.
We've been at this for so long, dude. It's so funny.
I remember that panel, too. It was with our guy from Vote Vets? No. It was with a veterans group and a gun rights group, gun violence group, not gun rights. Twig and I spoke at an NRA panel. No, I'm kidding.
In 2016, back before it was cool, right? It was like 2016.
Yeah, it was 2016. That's right.
Years ago, bud. Still tracking all sorts of stuff, but we'll do a one-on-one up.
We're gonna record later this week. We have a number of folks that, because Carrie was going to be in town, I did a blitz of all my favorite humans in DC. And then, of course, they're now getting back to me today. They're like, oh, yeah, I could do whatever. So we'll do either one of two things. We'll see how this plays and if this works. And I'll interview some folks, and maybe Twig can be in my ear or something, like straight out of...
Yeah. Let's just talk about it, because maybe I'll pop down. I'm not far.
Yeah, you can maybe pop down.
I'm in upstate New York. So.
Yeah. And then, we'll figure out ways that Twig and Jenkins could be back together in one place, maybe in LA. Anything else, Twig? What do we got?
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Should we call it?
Call it.
All right. Peace, y'all.